I am Harold Brennan, 68 years old, and for the past 4 months, I have been pretending that I don't notice my daughter is trying to steal everything I own. Last Tuesday, at the reading of my late wife's will, my daughter Victoria sat across from me with tears streaming down her face, clutching her husband Marcus's hand like a grieving child. She looked at me with those big, sorrowful eyes and told me she was worried about my mental state. She said I had been confused since Eleanor died. She said I needed help. What she didn't know was that I had been recording every word she said for 16 weeks. And what she definitely didn't know was that the lawyer sitting next to her, the one she had hired to handle Eleanor's estate, was about to hand her a document that would destroy her entire life. Before I tell you what happened when she signed that paper, I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Drop your location in the comments, and please hit like and subscribe if you believe that a father's love can turn into a father's justice when his children cross the line. The conference room at Whitmore & Associates smelled like old leather and new money. It was the kind of room designed to make you feel small, with its mahogany walls and portraits of dead partners staring down at you. I had been in rooms like this 1,000 times during my career. I had delivered bad news in rooms like this. I had told families their loved ones were dying in rooms like this. But I had never been the target in a room like this. Not until now. Victoria was crying. Of course she was crying. She had been crying for 3 weeks straight, ever since Eleanor passed. My wife, my partner of 43 years, the only woman I had ever loved. And Victoria, our daughter, had turned her death into a performance. "Oh, Daddy," she sobbed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that somehow never smudged her makeup. "This is so hard. I just miss Mom so much." "I know, sweetheart," I said. My voice was gentle. My face was soft. Inside, I was ice. Marcus, my son-in-law, put his arm around her. He was a big man, the kind who had played football in college and never let you forget it. He wore suits that cost more than my first car and watches that cost more than my first house. He ran a medical supply company. At least, that's what he called it. I knew better now. "Harold," Marcus said, his voice dripping with that patronizing concern I had come to recognize. "We've been talking. Victoria and I were worried about you." "Worried?" I blinked at him, letting confusion creep into my expression. "What do you mean?" Victoria reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was too tight. "Daddy, you've been so forgetful lately. You called me by Mom's name twice last week. And you forgot about our dinner on Sunday. You just didn't show up." I frowned. "Did I? I'm sorry, honey. I've just been so scattered since your mother." I let my voice trail off. I let my eyes go distant. I had been practicing this look in the mirror for weeks. The confused old man, the grieving widower, losing his grip. It was exactly what they wanted to see. "That's why we think," Marcus jumped in, leaning forward with an expression of deep concern, "that it might be time to consider some help. Some professional help, managing the estate, the finances, the house. It's a lot for one person, Harold, especially someone in your condition." My condition. I almost laughed. I was a board-certified cardiologist. I had performed over 3,000 surgeries in my career. I had published 47 papers. I had taught at Johns Hopkins for 15 years. And this former fraternity president who couldn't tell the difference between a stethoscope and a blood pressure cuff was concerned about my condition. But I didn't laugh. I just nodded slowly, as if the idea was sinking in. "You might be right," I said. "I have been feeling overwhelmed." Victoria's eyes lit up. She squeezed my hand harder. "We found someone, Daddy. A specialist. Dr. Patterson. He works with elderly patients who are going through transitions. He could do an evaluation. Just to see where you are." Dr. Patterson. I knew that name. I knew exactly who he was. And I knew exactly why they had chosen him. But I just smiled. "That sounds like a good idea, sweetheart. I'll meet with him." The relief on Victoria's face was almost comical. She thought she was winning. She thought her confused, senile father was walking right into her trap. She had no idea that I had been building my own trap for 4 months. And she had just stepped directly into the center of it. The door to the conference room opened, and the estate attorney walked in. Victoria had hired him. She had found him through Marcus's business connections. His name was Gerald Whitmore, and he was carrying a thick folder of documents. He looked at me with the same expression of professional concern that Victoria and Marcus had been wearing. "Mr. Brennan," he said, sitting down at the head of the table, "I'm so sorry for your loss. Eleanor was a wonderful woman." "Thank you," I said. "Now," he continued, opening the folder, "we're here to discuss the disposition of Eleanor's estate. As you know, she had significant assets in her own name, separate from your joint holdings." I nodded. Eleanor had inherited money from her father, old money, textile money. It was in a trust, and when she died, the trust dissolved. The assets, roughly $12 million, were now part of her estate. According to her will, Whitmore said, flipping through pages, the majority of her estate was to be divided equally between your two children, Victoria and your son, Daniel. Victoria's expression flickered. Daniel, my son, the one she hadn't mentioned in 3 years. The one she had systematically cut out of every family gathering since he refused to invest in Marcus's company. The one who had warned me, 2 years ago, that something was wrong with Victoria's husband. I hadn't listened then. I was listening now. "However," Whitmore continued, "there's a codicil, a condition on the inheritance." "A condition?" Victoria's voice was sharp. "What kind of condition?" Whitmore looked at me, then at Victoria. "The inheritance is contingent on Mr. Harold Brennan maintaining full legal capacity and control of his own affairs. If, at any point, Mr. Brennan is declared legally incompetent or placed under guardianship, the inheritance is to be placed in an irrevocable trust, managed by an independent trustee, until such time as his competency is restored or until his death, at which point it reverts to a charitable foundation of Eleanor's choosing." The silence in the room was absolute. Victoria's face had gone white. Marcus's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitching. They had been planning to have me declared incompetent. They had been planning to take control of my estate, and they had just discovered that Eleanor, my brilliant, beautiful wife, had anticipated them. She had protected me from beyond the grave. "That's," Victoria stammered, "that's ridiculous." Mom was confused at the end. She was on medication. This codicil must have been made when she wasn't in her right mind. Whitmore shook his head. "The codicil was added 18 months ago, Mrs. Chen. Your mother was examined by 2 independent physicians who certified her mental capacity. She was very clear about her intentions. I watched my daughter. I watched the grief performance crumble. I watched the mask slip. And underneath, I saw something cold, something calculating, something that had been hidden for years." She looked at Marcus. He looked at her. And in that silent exchange, I saw everything I needed to see. They weren't giving up. They were just changing tactics. I let them drive me home. I let Victoria fuss over me, making tea I didn't want, adjusting pillows I didn't need. I let Marcus pat my shoulder and tell me everything was going to be okay. And then, when they finally left, promising to check on me tomorrow, I walked into my study and closed the door. I sat down at my desk. The desk where I had written all those medical papers. The desk where I had read my children bedtime stories when they were small. The desk where, 4 months ago, I had finally admitted to myself that my daughter had become a stranger. It started the day after Eleanor's diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 8 because she was Eleanor, and she never did anything on anyone else's schedule. But the moment the diagnosis came, Victoria appeared. She had been distant for years, busy with her life in Chicago, busy with Marcus and his business. We saw her at Christmas sometimes, and the occasional birthday. But suddenly, she was here every week, every day, sitting by Eleanor's bedside, holding her hand, crying those perfect tears. I thought she had changed. I thought facing her mother's mortality had reminded her what family meant. I was wrong. It was Eleanor who first noticed. 3 months before she died, she called me into her room. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "Harold," she said, "Victoria is asking questions." "What kind of questions?" financial questions, about the trust, about the house, about your retirement accounts. She wanted to know who was listed as beneficiary on your life insurance. I frowned. She's probably just worried about the estate, making sure everything is in order. Eleanor shook her head. She's not worried, Harold. She's calculating. I know my daughter. I know that look in her eyes. I saw it when she was 12, and she convinced Daniel to trade his birthday money for a box of old toys. She told him they were collectibles. They were junk. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend my daughter. But Eleanor had always been the smart one. She saw things I missed. She saw through people in a way I never could. Watch her, Eleanor said, and watch Marcus. I've never trusted that man. He smiles too much, and I don't like his friends. 3 weeks later, Eleanor added the codicil to her will. She didn't tell me about it. She didn't tell anyone. She just did it, quietly, with the help of a lawyer Victoria didn't know. And then she died, and left me to discover just how right she had been. The week after the funeral, I found the first piece of evidence. Victoria had given me a new phone. She said my old one was outdated, that I needed something easier to use. I accepted it. But something about the way she insisted made me uncomfortable. I'm a doctor. I know how to research. I took the phone to a tech shop and asked them to examine it. What they found made my blood run cold. The phone had monitoring software installed. Every call, every text, every email I sent was being copied to another device. Victoria could see everything I did. She could read every word I wrote. She could track my location 24 hours a day. That was when I knew. That was when I stopped being a grieving father and started being a hunter. I kept the phone. I used it carefully, saying only what I wanted Victoria to hear. But I bought a second phone, a prepaid burner from a convenience store, and I started making calls. The first call was to my son, Daniel. He lived in Portland now. He was an engineer. He had a good job, a nice apartment, and a life that didn't include Victoria or Marcus. He had tried to warn me about them, and I had dismissed him. I owed him an apology. Dad? His voice was cautious. Is everything okay? No, I said. It's not, and I think you were right about your sister. The silence on the line stretched for a long moment. Then Daniel let out a breath. Tell me everything. I did. I told him about the phone. I told him about the strange questions. I told him about the codicil and the way Victoria's face had looked when she heard about it. I knew it, Daniel said. I knew something was wrong. Dad, Marcus's company is in trouble. I've been tracking it. He's been borrowing against everything. He's overextended. Some of his suppliers have been complaining about late payments. There are rumors about a federal investigation. Federal investigation? For what? Medicare fraud, Daniel said. His company supplies equipment to nursing homes. There have been whistleblower complaints about billing for equipment that was never delivered. Dad, if those complaints are real, Marcus is looking at prison time. And if he's looking at prison time, he's looking for a way out. He needs money. A lot of money. How much? Best guess? Daniel paused. Somewhere between 8 and 12 million. The exact amount of Eleanor's estate. The exact amount that Victoria stood to inherit, if she could get control of it. The second call was to a man named Ray Foster. He was a private investigator. An old friend of mine from college had used him during a nasty divorce. He said Foster was expensive, thorough, and absolutely discreet. Dr. Brennan, Foster said when I explained my situation. What you're describing is elder financial abuse. It's more common than you think, and it's almost always family. I know, I said. That's why I need your help. Foster was efficient. Within 2 weeks, he had compiled a file on Marcus that was thicker than some of my medical textbooks. The Medicare fraud was real. There had been complaints from 3 different whistleblowers. The FBI had opened an investigation 6 months ago. Marcus knew about it. He was desperate. But there was more. Foster found records of meetings between Marcus and a man named Dr. Richard Patterson, the same Dr. Patterson that Victoria had recommended for my evaluation. Patterson was a psychiatrist. He specialized in geriatric patients. And 5 years ago, He had been investigated by the medical board for issuing false diagnoses of dementia to elderly patients whose families wanted control of their estates. The investigation had been inconclusive. Patterson kept his license, but Foster found 3 families who had sued him in civil court. All 3 cases had been settled with confidentiality agreements. All 3 involved elderly patients who had been declared incompetent, only to have the diagnoses reversed when independent doctors examined them. Patterson was a hired gun, a doctor for sale, and Marcus had been meeting with him for months. "They're going to have you declared mentally incompetent," Foster told me. "Patterson will do the evaluation. He'll find whatever he needs to find. Then they'll go to court for guardianship. Once they have that, they control everything. Your bank accounts, your investments, your property, everything. And my mother's inheritance goes into trust," I said, "which they can't touch." "Right," Foster said. "But here's the thing. The codicil only protects Eleanor's estate. It doesn't protect yours, your assets, your retirement, your house. Once they have guardianship, all of that is theirs." I sat back in my chair. I had been so focused on Eleanor's money that I hadn't thought about my own. I had over $4 million in retirement accounts, another $2 million in investments. The house was worth $800,000. I was worth almost $7 million. And if Victoria and Marcus could have me declared incompetent, they could take it all. "What do I do?" I asked. Foster was quiet for a moment. "You fight back," he said, "but you have to be smart about it. You have to let them think they're winning until the moment they've already lost." I am not a naive man. I spent 40 years in operating rooms, making life and death decisions. I have watched patients die on my table. I have delivered news that destroyed families. I have looked into the faces of people who were about to lose everything, and I have learned to do it without flinching. But this was different. This was my daughter. This was the little girl who used to sit on my lap and beg me to read her one more story. This was the teenager who cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke her heart. This was the woman I had walked down the aisle, beaming with pride. How had she become this? The answer, I came to realize, was Marcus. She had met him 12 years ago at a charity gala. He was charming. He was successful. He drove a nice car and wore expensive clothes and knew all the right people. Victoria was 32 and worried she was running out of time. She married him within a year. From the beginning, something was off. Marcus had opinions about everything. He told Victoria what to wear, who to see, how to spend her time. He isolated her from old friends. He turned her against Daniel, convincing her that her brother was jealous of her success. And slowly, over the years, the daughter I knew disappeared. She was replaced by this person. This cold, calculating stranger who looked at her father and saw a number. I didn't blame her entirely. Marcus had twisted her. But I didn't excuse her either. She was a grown woman. She had made choices. And now she would face the consequences. Foster set up the surveillance. Hidden cameras in my study, my living room, my kitchen, audio recorders that looked like ordinary household objects. Every conversation that happened in my house was now being captured. The first meeting with Dr. Patterson happened 2 weeks later. Victoria drove me to his office herself. She held my hand the whole way, her grip just a little too tight. "It's going to be okay, Daddy," she said. "Dr. Patterson just wants to talk. He's very nice." I played my part. I shuffled into the office. I looked confused by the paperwork. I asked Dr. Patterson to repeat questions that were perfectly clear. And when he showed me simple memory tests, I pretended to struggle. "Mr. Brennan," Patterson said, making notes in his file, "can you tell me what day of the week it is?" I frowned. "Is it Thursday? No, wait, Tuesday?" It was Wednesday. I knew exactly what day it was. I knew exactly what time it was. And I knew exactly what game he was playing. "And can you tell me who the current president is?" I paused for a long moment. "Obama? No, that's not right. The other one, the businessman." Patterson nodded, writing something in his file. He looked at Victoria with an expression of professional concern. "Mrs. Chen, I'd like to schedule a follow-up evaluation, a more comprehensive one." Can you bring your father back next week? Of course, Victoria said. Whatever he needs. I sat there, saying nothing. Just an old man with a failing mind. Just a target waiting to be taken. Over the next 3 weeks, I had 4 more sessions with Dr. Patterson. Each time, I performed. I forgot names. I lost track of dates. I told stories that didn't make sense and then looked confused when Patterson pointed out the inconsistencies. And each time, Victoria sat outside in the waiting room, texting Marcus updates. Foster had managed to access her messages. The texts were damning. Session went great. He's definitely getting worse. Patterson says we can file for guardianship next month. I think we can have this wrapped up by Christmas. Wrapped up. Like I was a problem to be solved. Like I was an obstacle to be removed. The final session was different. Patterson called Victoria into the room. He wanted to discuss his findings. I'm afraid the news isn't good, he said, looking at Victoria with practiced sympathy. Your father is showing clear signs of progressive cognitive decline, memory impairment, confusion, difficulty with basic reasoning. Based on my evaluation, I believe he is no longer capable of managing his own affairs. Victoria's performance was flawless. She burst into tears. Oh, Daddy, she sobbed, grabbing my hand. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I patted her hand. It's all right, sweetheart. I know you'll take care of me. What are our options? Victoria asked Patterson, dabbing at her eyes. You'll need to petition the court for guardianship, Patterson said. I can provide testimony supporting your claim. Given the severity of his decline, I don't anticipate any opposition. Victoria nodded, her eyes bright with tears that weren't quite reaching her cheeks. Whatever's best for Daddy. I sat there silently. The confused old man, the senile father, the easy victim. They had no idea what was coming. The court date was set for December 15th, 2 days before what would have been Eleanor's 71st birthday. Victoria and Marcus had hired an attorney who specialized in guardianship cases. They had filed all the paperwork. They had Patterson's evaluation. They were confident. I had been pretending for 4 months. 4 months of shuffling around my own house, pretending to be lost. 4 months of forgetting names and dates and appointments. 4 months of letting my daughter think she was winning. It was exhausting. It was degrading. And it was almost over. The night before the hearing, I sat in my study and reviewed the evidence one more time. Foster had done excellent work. We had recordings of every conversation. We had documentation of Marcus's Medicare fraud. We had evidence of Patterson's history of false diagnoses. And we had something else. Something I had discovered just 2 weeks ago that changed everything. Marcus wasn't just billing Medicare for equipment that wasn't delivered. He was selling that equipment overseas. Medical supplies meant for American nursing homes were being shipped to foreign hospitals and sold for cash. Cash that disappeared into offshore accounts. Cash that Marcus used to fund his lifestyle while his company hemorrhaged money. It was called export fraud. It was a federal crime, and it carried a sentence of up to 20 years. Foster had contacted the FBI. They had been investigating Marcus for months. They knew about the scheme, and they were ready to move. All they needed was a reason to arrest him, a reason that wouldn't tip off Victoria, a reason that would catch both of them in the same net. I was going to give them that reason. The morning of the hearing, I got dressed in my best suit. The same suit I had worn to Eleanor's funeral. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw an old man. Gray hair, tired eyes, weathered skin. But inside, I was sharp. I was focused. I was ready. Victoria picked me up at 9. She was wearing a black dress, appropriately somber. Marcus was with her. He shook my hand and told me everything was going to be fine. Don't worry, Harold, he said. We're going to take good care of you. I smiled. I know you will. The courtroom was small and quiet. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s named Patricia Holloway. Foster had done his research on her too. She had a reputation for being thorough, for asking hard questions, for not being easily fooled. The hearing began. Victoria's attorney presented their case. He described my cognitive decline. He detailed my confusion and memory problems. He played recordings from Patterson's evaluation. He painted a picture of a sad, senile old man who needed his loving daughter to step in and protect him. I sat silently, my hands folded in my lap. The confused old man, the helpless father, the perfect victim. Then Patterson took the stand. He described his evaluation in clinical detail. He used medical terminology. He cited diagnostic criteria. He concluded, with absolute certainty, that I was suffering from progressive dementia and was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. Victoria dabbed at her eyes throughout his testimony. Marcus held her hand. They looked like the perfect, concerned family. Finally, Victoria's attorney turned to the judge. Your Honor, based on the evidence presented, we respectfully request that Victoria Chen be granted full guardianship over her father, Harold Brennan. We believe this is in his best interest and necessary for his protection. Judge Holloway nodded slowly. She looked at me. Mr. Brennan, you have the right to speak on your own behalf. Is there anything you'd like to say? I looked at Victoria. She was smiling at me with those big, sympathetic eyes. She thought she had won. I stood up, and then I dropped the mask. Yes, Your Honor, I said. My voice was clear, strong, sharp. I would like to say quite a few things. Victoria's smile faltered. Marcus's hand tightened on hers. First, I continued, I would like to introduce my own expert witness, Dr. Brennan. The courtroom door opened. A woman in her 50s walked in. She was wearing a white coat over a gray suit. She looked professional, competent, unimpeachable. This is Dr. Sarah Brennan, I said. She's my niece. She's also the head of neurology at Massachusetts General Hospital. She has examined me 3 times over the past 2 months. I believe she has some findings she'd like to share. What? Victoria's voice was sharp. You can't. This isn't. Judge Holloway held up a hand. Mrs. Chen, please. She looked at Dr. Sarah Brennan. Doctor, please approach. Sarah took the stand. She described her examinations in detail. She explained the tests she had administered. She presented her findings. Mr. Harold Brennan, she concluded, shows no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. His memory is excellent. His reasoning is sharp. His mental faculties are completely intact. In my professional opinion, any diagnosis of dementia is simply incorrect. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Victoria's attorney stood up. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Dr. Patterson is a respected psychiatrist. His evaluation was thorough and professional. I smiled. Your Honor, I have some questions about Dr. Patterson's professionalism. I gestured to the back of the courtroom. The door opened again. Ray Foster walked in, carrying a thick folder. This is Ray Foster, I said. He's a licensed private investigator. Over the past 4 months, he has been documenting my daughter's attempts to have me falsely declared incompetent. He has audio recordings of conversations at my home. He has text messages between my daughter and her husband. And he has extensive documentation of Dr. Patterson's history of providing false diagnoses for pay. Patterson's face went white. He started to stand, but the judge's sharp look stopped him. Additionally, I continued, Mr. Foster has evidence that my son-in-law, Marcus Chen, is currently under federal investigation for Medicare fraud and export violations. He has been billing the government for medical equipment that was never delivered and selling that equipment overseas for personal profit. The total amount is somewhere in the range of $14 million. Marcus's face went from white to green. He stood up. This is outrageous. He's lying. He's confused. You can see, he's confused. I looked at him. I'm not confused, Marcus. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that you thought I was an easy target. I'm disappointed that you convinced my daughter to help you steal from her own father. And I'm disappointed that you both thought I was too old and too stupid to see what you were doing. Judge Holloway raised her hand. Order. She looked at Foster. Mr. Foster, please approach with your evidence. Foster handed her the folder. She flipped through it for several minutes. Her expression grew darker with each page. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Chen, Dr. Patterson, I'm going to need all of you to remain in this courtroom. She reached for her phone. Bailiff, please secure the exits, and someone call the FBI. The arrests happened quickly. 2 agents were waiting outside. Foster had coordinated with them. They had warrants ready. Marcus was charged with Medicare fraud, export violations, and conspiracy. Victoria was charged with elder abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. Dr. Patterson was charged with fraud and practicing medicine under false pretenses. I stood in the courtroom and watched my daughter be handcuffed. She was screaming. She was crying. She was calling my name. Daddy, please. You don't understand. I was trying to help you. I love you. I was just trying to protect you. I looked at her for a long moment. I saw the little girl who used to sit on my lap. I saw the teenager who cried on my shoulder. I saw the woman I had walked down the aisle, and I saw what she had become. No, Victoria, I said. You weren't trying to protect me. You were trying to erase me. And now you're going to have to live with that. They led her out of the courtroom. Marcus followed, silent and pale. Patterson went last, his head bowed. Judge Holloway looked at me. Mr. Brennan, I am so sorry this happened to you. I shook my head. Don't be sorry, Your Honor. Be vigilant. There are a lot of people like me out there. Old people, vulnerable people, people whose families see them as opportunities instead of loved ones. I'm lucky. I had the resources to fight back. Most of them don't. She nodded slowly. You're right. And I promise you, I will remember this case every time a guardianship petition crosses my desk. Thank you, I said. That's all I can ask. The trials took 8 months. Marcus went first. The federal case was straightforward. The evidence was overwhelming. $14 million in fraud, export violations, wire fraud, money laundering. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. 22 years, federal prison, no possibility of parole. Victoria's trial was harder. She claimed she was a victim. She claimed Marcus had manipulated her. She claimed she didn't know about the fraud, the fake diagnosis, the scheme to steal my estate. The prosecutor played the recordings from my house. Victoria's voice, cold and calculating, discussing how to handle my confusion. Victoria's text messages, counting down the days until they could file for guardianship. Victoria's emails to Dr. Patterson, coordinating the fake evaluation. The jury didn't believe her. 12 years, state prison, eligible for parole in 8. Patterson got 5 years. He cooperated with the prosecution. He testified against Victoria and Marcus. But the judge made it clear that his medical career was over. He would never practice again. I didn't attend the sentencing hearings. I didn't need to see it. The justice had been done, the trap had been sprung, and I had won. But winning didn't feel the way I expected. The week after Victoria's sentencing, I got a phone call. It was from Daniel. He had been following the trials from Portland. He had sent me letters, offered to come and support me. I had told him to stay away. I didn't want him to see his sister like that. Dad, he said, how are you doing? I thought about the question. How was I doing? My wife was dead. My daughter was in prison. My son-in-law was in federal custody. I had won a battle I never wanted to fight. I'm tired, I said finally. I'm just very, very tired. Can I come visit? Daniel asked. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said. I'd like that. Daniel came the next week. He looked older than I remembered. He had gray at his temples now. He was 42 years old, a grown man, a stranger I had neglected. We sat in my study, the room where I had planned my counterattack, and we talked. We talked about Eleanor. We talked about Victoria. We talked about all the years of distance and silence. I should have listened to you, I said. You tried to warn me about Marcus. You saw what he was, and I didn't listen. Daniel shook his head. Dad, you loved her. She was your daughter. You wanted to believe the best about her. That's not a flaw. That's just being a parent. But she tried to destroy me. She did, Daniel said. And you stopped her. You protected yourself. You got justice. But that doesn't mean you have to hate her forever. It just means you have to accept who she is. I looked at my son. When did you get so wise? He smiled, a sad smile that reminded me of Eleanor. I had a lot of time to think, Dad, a lot of years on my own. And I realized something. Family isn't about blood. It's about choice. Victoria made her choices. You made yours. I made mine. And now we have to live with all of them. What do we do now? Daniel reached out and put his hand on my shoulder. We start over, he said. We rebuild, and we try to do better. That was 6 months ago. The house is quiet now. I've moved some things around, gotten rid of the furniture that Eleanor picked out, the pieces that remind me too much of what we lost. I've put up new photographs, me and Eleanor on our wedding day, Daniel at his college graduation. A picture of Victoria as a little girl before everything went wrong. I still think about her. My daughter, the woman who tried to steal my life. I don't visit her in prison. She doesn't write. The silence between us is absolute. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if things could have been different. If I had been more present. If I had noticed the warning signs earlier. If I had fought harder to keep her from Marcus's influence. I don't have answers. I probably never will. What I do have is purpose. After the trials ended, I met with my lawyers. I restructured Eleanor's estate. I created a foundation, the Brennan Family Foundation for Elder Justice. It provides legal assistance to elderly people who are facing financial abuse from their own families. We've helped 47 families in the first year. We've stopped fraudulent guardianship petitions. We've exposed corrupt doctors and predatory attorneys. We've given people the resources to fight back. It's not revenge. It's prevention. It's protection. It's making sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to someone else. Daniel works with me now. He moved back from Portland. He runs the technical side of the foundation. We've built something together. Something real. Something that matters. Last week, I got a letter. It was from Victoria. The first communication I'd had from her since the trial. I almost threw it away without reading it. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just the part of me that still remembered her as that little girl on my lap. The letter was short. 3 paragraphs. No excuses. No justifications. She wrote about the prison, about the other inmates, about the programs she was taking. She wrote about therapy, about learning to understand what she had done and why. And at the end, she wrote one sentence that I keep thinking about. I don't expect you to forgive me, Daddy. I just want you to know that I'm finally trying to become the daughter you deserved. I don't know if she means it. I don't know if people can really change. I don't know if the little girl I loved is still in there somewhere, buried under all the choices she made. But I'm a doctor. I've spent my whole life believing in the possibility of healing. Maybe, one day, I'll write her back. For now, I sit in my study. The room where I planned my counterattack. The room where I saved my own life. And I think about Eleanor. About the codicil she added to protect me. About the love that outlasted her death. She saved me. Even when she was gone, she saved me. I pick up the phone and call Daniel. "Hey," I say when he answers. "Want to come over for dinner?" "Sure, Dad. What are we having?" "I don't know yet," I say. "Let's figure it out together." I hang up and walk into the kitchen. The sun is setting outside, painting the windows gold. The house is quiet, but it's not empty. It's full of memories, full of possibility. I'm 68 years old. My wife is dead. My daughter is in prison. My son-in-law is in federal custody. I've seen the worst of what family can become, but I've also seen the best. I've seen a son who forgave his father's blindness. I've seen a wife who protected her husband from beyond the grave. I've seen the strength that comes from standing up for yourself, even when everyone expects you to fall. This story teaches us that age is not weakness. Experience is power. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the world is an old man with nothing to lose and everything to protect. My family tried to erase me. They looked at my gray hair and my tired eyes, and they saw an easy victim. They saw a number. They saw an opportunity. But they didn't see me. They didn't see 40 years of experience. They didn't see a lifetime of making hard decisions. They didn't see the man Eleanor married, the man who never backed down from a fight. Underestimate your elders at your own risk. We've been watching. We've been learning. And when you come for us, we're ready. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Harold made the right choice in exposing his daughter, Or should he have tried to resolve things privately? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you've ever dealt with family members who saw you as an opportunity instead of a loved one, know that you're not alone. There are resources out there. There are people who can help. And there's always hope, even in the darkest moments. Thank you for listening. I'm Harold Brennan, and this is my story.